Hello, this is Daniel from soundheadquarters.com. In today's episode, we are making these wood slat acoustic panels to match the wood slat walls that we built in our previous episodes. This is part 2 of this beautiful home studio build. You can see there's a sneak peek of the finished product, and I'm going to show you how we built it. So to match the spacing of the walls that we built in the previous episode, I am measuring slat to see how wide we can make this panel where it lines up on a finished section so all the spacing can remain equal. And for us, we decided upon 24 inches. It lined up perfectly, and it just so happens that that's 2 feet wide, which is perfect. So now we're measuring our cut-off pieces from building the wall. This is the material that we'll be making the slats with. We already stained and clear-coated these in the previous episode. So we had just over 3 feet for all these cut pieces, so we decided to make the final length of these panels 3 feet. Now here I am measuring the width of our 2x2 lumber to subtract that amount from our height, because if we want to make these panels 3 feet tall, we have to account for that width of the frame from top and bottom, right? So we subtract that 3 inches from our 36-inch mark, and so our vertical pieces for these panels will be 33 inches long, and our horizontal pieces, top and bottom, will be 24 inches wide. That leaves us with a 2x3 foot final dimensions for our panel. So I'm just going ahead and getting our lumber all cut, and I'm using the first cut as a template so that all of the pieces match. So one 2-foot section I'll use as the template to cut all 4 of them, and then the same thing with the 3-foot section. So just getting all my frame lumber all cut. And once that is all cut, we can begin screwing the frame together. Now we are using 2-inch construction screws, and same method that we do on all of our panels, 2 screws per corner, and using the floor as a guide for our drill. You can see in all of my previous videos on acoustic panel building. And this panel, since we're covering in the wood slats, does not need routering. So as soon as we are done building this frame, we can get straight to upholstery. So first thing we're doing is the rear upholstery, because once the rear fabric is on, then we can add the acoustic insulation. So just getting our fabric cut there, and then we can begin stapling. So I'm using a pneumatic stapler, but you can use a handheld T50 stapler. It's strong enough to drive into the wood of these frames. And I'm using 1/4-inch staples, and we're just getting this secured just with light tension, and then cutting off the excess so that we have a clean rear edge when we fold over our front fabric. Now here's the acoustic insulation we're using. We're using Rockwool Comfort Board 80, and we can just cut this to size and add into the panel frame. And once that's in there, I'm just getting rid of the excess so that it doesn't bulge out into the fabric. And once we have both panels ready there, we can work on our front upholstery. So just laying out my fabric there, and once again, just light tension. I like to get all 4 of my corners done first, and then I can tension the first long side, and then use that to tension the opposite long side, and then repeat the process for the short sides. Cut off all the excess. There's lots of videos on my channel showing a more detailed view of my upholstery process. If you'd like to watch that, check that out. And just going ahead and getting this other panel all done, making sure those corners are nice and neat so it sits flush on the wall. And then we cut off all of our excess fabric, and these are ready for the wood slats now. So just getting my final measurements of these panels. We're right at 36 inches, right at 3 feet. So now I can transfer this measurement on to those wood slats right there, and we can get all of our pieces cut before we start tacking them into these panels. So I'm just making my one first piece, measuring it, and then just using that as the template to cut all the rest of the pieces. Each of these panels at 2 feet wide used 10 slats, and this was with 1-inch spacing in between with 1x2, but always measure your material because there's always inconsistencies in wood. There's always variance depending on suppliers, so make sure that you measure out yours accordingly. But I'm just tacking in that first and last pieces right on the edge of that acoustic panel, and I know that since I measured out my acoustic wall in the very beginning that this will line up perfectly at 2 feet. So I can just go ahead and start using my spacer. This is the same spacer from the previous video that I used to make the spacing in the walls. So that way I know that all of my slat spacing for this entire build, it's all consistent and it all visually looks the same next to each other. So we're just going ahead and getting that second panel done. And you can see I'm just nailing into the top and bottom of the frame there and using my spacer on both sides. And those cut ends of these wood slats will just get touched up with stain and clear coat upon final installation. And just had some imperfections in that last slat, so I cut a fresh one, tacked that in, and there are our finished wood slat acoustic panels. These are going to be going on the front wall of our studio build, beside screens and all kinds of gear in the desks, behind the speakers. And we also built a window panel for this client. This client wanted to block out the outside noise and to just give more privacy to the studio. So we decided upon doing a panel that fits right inside the gap of the window jamb. This is something common that we do for clients, especially in basement studios. And we decided to add the wood slats as well, just to keep everything consistent across the whole studio build and just to give a nice finished look. So same process here, except we have to build this frame exactly to fit within the window jamb. So I'm just getting my pieces cut after measuring, and then I just use one screw because it's going to take a lot of test fitting to make sure that this frame fits correctly with enough wiggle room for the fabric and enough wiggle room to get it in and out. It's always code in these basements that the window you need to be able to actually like escape from should anything happen. So we always make sure of that. We're not breaking any code here. We are making sure that this panel is removable, and you can just simply use the wood slats as a handle. So I'm just using one screw because, as you see, we had to take it apart and trim, but it's always better to be larger and have to trim down to get the perfect fit than to be too small and have to use more material to get that larger size. So once we are test fit correctly, we can get our fabric cut and just repeat the exact same process as we did to make the wall panels. So rear fabric, then acoustic insulation, then front fabric, and then all of the wood slats. If you want some more detailed look at these wood slats, how we finished them, how we sanded, stained, and clear coated them, all of the prep work that went into this job, and to see the rest of the studio that we're building here, you can check out my previous video. And this is part 2 of this studio build. Part 3 should be the final. We are doing a fiber optic ceiling cloud for the vocal booth, and just all of the tying up all the loose ends, adding the gear back into the studio, all the furniture. So stay tuned for that. Really excited for the finale of this home studio build. This has been a very cool custom build, and really appreciate everyone watching, and stay tuned for more. So we're finishing up the fabric here. And just trimming off the excess. And then going ahead with our wood slats. So we're just test fitting this just to make sure that everything fits in nice with the fabric. And I'm just leaving a little lip there so I can still get it out. I don't want to push this in all the way and not be able to take it out yet. So everything fits nice, so we can add the wood slats now. So exact same process. I'm just using my square there to make sure that I'm lined up nicely at the bottom edge before I tack everything in. And once I tack that first one in, I can use the square to align it on a 90 degree so that everything is nice and vertical. And once we have all those tacked in, we can just add right back into the wall. We had a nice snug fit, and actually ended up being where the wood slats lay flush with the wall. It's a really nice finished product. You can see some other close-up shots right here. There's a nice shot right there, and then another one just to show more of the detail of the wood slats right there. So stay tuned for part 3. We're going to be doing that fiber optic star ceiling cloud. Please check out my website, soundheadquarters.com, for acoustic panels, diffusers, and you can reach out for any sort of custom build inquiries. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This is Daniel from Sound Headquarters. Peace out.